Okay, so this is the computer we picked up recently with the strange video cards inside, and it's a Pentium M233 MHz, and that's a significant processor because it was the last of the Pentium ones. Shortly after that, Intel introduced the Pentium 2, starting at I think at 300 MHz. So this is the last and the fastest Pentium 1 computer, and I think because of that we should do something special with it. So we're going to rebuild this as it would have been at retail in 1997. We're going to clean it up, we're going to add in the things that are missing, and take out the things that shouldn't be in there. So we've got the base unit itself, that's fine. What else do we need? Well, we're going to need a keyboard. So I don't have a Windows 95 keyboard. I do have this Dell Bigfoot, which is PS2, and it's mechanical. It's a couple of years earlier, it's got a different logo, and I will get an age-appropriate keyboard very soon, but that's what we're going to work with now. It would have come with a Microsoft PS2 mouse, so we definitely have one of those. It's got the CD-ROM in, we're going to service that or replace it. The floppy drive I think is working, so that's all good. What else are we going to need hardware? Well, we're going to need a hard disk. It's currently without a hard disk. It would have come with a 4.3 gigabyte drive as per the advert. This is an 8, but it is about the right age. It's from December 1997, so this is very contemporary for this build. 8 gigs, and hopefully the BIOS will recognize that fairly easily. We're also going to need some sound. Now the advert said it would have come with a Vibra 16C. I don't want to use one of those because they're not great for DOS gaming. So I've got this Opti one instead. It's an ISO card which is going to help with the DOS side of things. It's an 82C931. Not bad, I think, for DOS compatibility. Works with Windows as well, so that should be a good all-round card. We can always update that with something slightly better. I've got an AWE64, but that's going in a different build, which we're going to talk about on a future video. So we're going to try this for this one. Right, I'm going to put a network card in as well. Now I'm going to use a PCI one. The advert says they should have come with a 3-com. This is a Netgear one, but it's basically the same age and same sort of functionality. So this should be quite a straightforward plug-in. Does this got a date on it? Can't see a manufacturing date. The maybe 18th week of 99, so that's maybe a little bit late. But hopefully we can get that working with Windows 95. So that's good. So we've got 3 ISO slots and 3 PCI slots to play with, so that's one of each taken. And there's a gap between the two, so the two that are adjacent don't overlap, which is nice because they're often shared. We're going to need some sound. So I haven't got any Altec Lansings, but I have got some nice Yamahas. This is a DSP-20, I think from memory. YST M200 SP, in fact. So it's got DSP function. That's what I was remembering the DSP from. So pretty good little speaker, at least as good as what would have come with it. So that's nice. And we're going to need an operating system. So Windows 95, and I've got a Dell OEM version here with the CD. So that's going to be going on there. Lovely. Now this probably was a business orientated machine, so we're also going to put on the OEM version of Microsoft Office 97. So that should be very sort of appropriate and contemporary for this particular machine. But it's not all boring work stuff. So why not put Microsoft Plus on as well? So this is Plus for Windows 95. That'll give some extra themes and screensavers. Talking of which, we might as well put After Dark on there as well. That'll be a bit more fun. And of course, we have to put Duke on there. Bit of late DOS gaming. This should play really well on this machine. And we'll put some nice early Windows 95 games on there as well. I've got a couple of things in mind. I've got Flight Simulator lined up and a few other things, but we should also put on some serious stuff. So we'll put Norton Utilities on there as well. That may make things worse rather than better, but we won't know till we try. So there we are. I think we've got everything we need for our build, except one thing, the monitor. Now I can't fit that on the screen, so I'm not going to show you that. But basically I managed to pick up earlier today a really nice Dell 15-inch Trinitron beige CRT that is very age appropriate. The image is a bit dim. It did brighten up a little bit as it was warming up, but we're going to use that one. If it doesn't work, I have got another backup we can use, but it's not a Dell branded one. But anyway, there we are. Should have enough to have quite an interesting build. First of all, though, we need to strip out the stuff that's in that machine that shouldn't be in there. Okie dokie. So let's get the cards out of here that aren't supposed to be in here. At least not for this build. They were supposed to be in here for when it was made. There we go. Always harder than it needs to be. All right, so it's this section here that's not quite as we need it. So hopefully the only tool we're going to need for this is our screwdriver. We'll take out these 3 ISA cards. So one of them is the dual serial card, and then you've got 2 dual head ET4000 video cards. Not going to need those for this build. Just trying to pick them up somewhere where I'm not going to damage any components. And this one, if I remember rightly. Here we go. So it's got a network card in it, actually, hasn't it already? Is that my blood? No. So I've got a Netgear network card to go in, but it looks like there's already a card in there. I need to keep grounding myself on another computer because it feels a bit staticky in the air today. Okay, so that is a 3Com card that's in there, so that is actually part of the original spec, so let's leave that one in there. What we're going to do is put the sound card in a bit. We need to get the hard drive in. So this doesn't come with a hard drive. This is the obvious place to put it. There's a bracket underneath the floppy drive here, or next to the floppy drive I should say. We've got spare Merlixes, and we've got the spare cables. Do we need to service this first though? Or should we just do a straight replacement? I think we go for a straight replacement on that. I've got one coming in the post. It might be here today. So to take the front case off, you've got some tabs here and here, and then that just slides away. Obviously it's going to need a proper clean. And then there's a screw here at the front for this drive cage. So let's take that out. Remove the power. It's got some rails here and here that it slides on. I can't see anything else that's holding it in place. And there we go. It's just a bit stiff from not being removed since been put together since 1997. So let's move that out of the way. So here's the drive cage. Yep, in fact it's got floppy disk and hard disk label on the cage. It's got a line mark here. That's for dropping it back into the chassis, I think. There's a screw there holding, so on the back here you can see there's a bracket to make that a 3.5 rather than 5.25. Cool, and then there's a little bracket here if you wanted to add something down below. But what we're going to do is just take out this drive for now, and then put in a replacement temporarily so that we can get things installed. So that's just going to slide out, in theory. It's very stiff. It's got a Dell part number on it, so it was the original drive. It doesn't say who makes it, which is interesting. Ah, yes it does. So it's a Toshiba drive, December 1997. So that's probably when this was made, very late 97, very early 98. Does that mean it's a 6 or no 10 times drive maybe? Doesn't say on the front. They stopped doing that after a while. Kind of became irrelevant, didn't it? So I think this needs servicing. So we'll put that to one side. I've got this other drive. Now I don't know if this is working. It came out of a very battered old system. In fact, if you've seen the video with the disastrous Mac haul, it came out of the HP Brio, I think, that was at the end of that. It's a Mitsumi drive. It's from a very similar period, so I'm happy to use it. It's 48 times. I'm very happy to use it. It's kind of period correct. It's probably not going to be the right colour. Unfortunately not, it's a bit too brown. But I'm just going to put one screw in because I'm going to change it back for the original drive once I've serviced it, or put in something that's got a slightly better colour on it. And even though it's only going in temporarily, it's definitely got to line up. There we go. Alright, so there's the CMOS battery. We might as well deal with that while we're in here. Okay, so it's nearly up to 3 volts. So maybe that isn't the original, maybe that is already been replaced at some point in its life. I'm going to put it back in. No point creating toxic waste in a landfill if we don't need to. Anything else we need to look at while we're in here? Let's have a little look at the system board. So it's got these very brightly coloured heatsinks, which I don't ever remember seeing in a Dell before. Somebody was having some fun at that point. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the ribbon cables, or at least move them to one side. And we'll have a little look at the board in a bit more detail. So you've got power connector here, and it's got a non-standard. It's got a kind of ATX one here, and then it's got also got an AT connector here. There's also the fan connector there. The motherboard's held in with a few screws and some plastic pegs to align it. There's room here for some audio headers. Don't know who made this board for Dell. There's a sticker on here telling you what the settings are to get 233 megahertz on the CPU. So it's obviously been a 233 from the beginning. It says that on the case. Here's the front panel header using a custom cable. Intel VX PCI chipset. And here we've got the S3 video chip. So it's a Verge DX. So that's the kind of second iteration of the Verge chip as far as I'm aware. Got 2 RAM slots, there's only 2, which does limit us a little bit. And then we've got these chips here on the board, which I'm guessing, I can't see the markings from here, I'm guessing they may be RAM chips for the video memory, although that could be what this row are here, as I can't get close enough to have a look. It may be clearer on the video, in fact, than it is to my eyes from here. So there's nothing really unusual about this motherboard. As I said, there is this gap between the ISAs and the PCI, so you can actually use 6 cards in here. Quite often they've taken out this 4th PCI because that would have been a shared slot, so you wouldn't have been able to use a PCI and an ISA card anyway. So it's nice that you can get all 6 in without worrying about clashes. Save them some money at the same time. Empty socket here for something. Not clear what that would have been. It's possible it may have had onboard networking as an option. It's very clean. It's one thing I noticed when I first opened it up the first time. It's really clean, considering how old it was. And considering it probably was, on the amount of money they spent on all those add-in cards, this probably had a long, useful life. I think this must have been in some very air-conditioned lab for it to be this clean after such a long time. There's hardly any debris on the fan. Heat sinks are, you know, almost spotlessly clean. Even if this had been in storage for 20 years, 25 years, then there would be some debris. But I think this has been used in a high-tech air-conditioned lab of some kind. So that's why it's in such good condition, apart from the rubber feet of whatever was on top has stuck to it. Anyway, back to today's build. So, let's carry on. Let's put the sound card in while we're here, around the back. So I'm just going to put it in this end slot for no particular reason. Let's come back around to the front. So we've got this drive cage we can put in. For the purposes of kind of maintenance, I'm not going to put the hard drive in the bottom of the drive cage. I'm going to put it here, which is where I think it probably would have come from the factory. But let's try and get this drive cage back in anyway. So there's this align mark, and there's an align mark here. So it goes in like that, and then slides backwards. There we go. As you can see, there is a colour mismatch, which is going to bother me. Again, the fact this plastic having discoloured means it's probably been in some very windowless lab. Intriguing. So in terms of cable management, it's not a lot to do. We've got 2 spare Molexes, which would make sense for the number of bays we've got. Let's put the power in. So there's no audio connector from the optical drive down to the motherboard. I don't remember seeing a connector on the motherboard to take one. No, can't see one obviously. So this wasn't particularly designed to be a multimedia system. In fact, the sound card is not populated, backs that up. So there's probably an empty part of the board where the header would have been, which I can't quite see at the moment. But anyway, so we're not going to be able to get audio, at least analog audio, out of the drive, but digital audio should be fine over the cable. So can we work out which is primary and secondary cables? I can't see that it's marked. My guess would be that the one nearest the floppy drive is going to be the primary cable, particularly as it's a bit shorter, so it only has to go to there, whereas this one goes to there. So I'm guessing this is primary, this is the secondary channel. Let's plug that drive in while we still have access. Okay, optical drives in. Let's put the hard drive in. So this is an 8 gig IDE drive from IBM. It's from 1997. It's, you know, about the right era. So that's really good. And it should just slide in to here. Let's put it in the other way around, otherwise the screws aren't going to line up. So it only just clears the motherboard. And the screws don't line up, which is interesting. If I put it in this way, the screws aren't going to line up either. Okay, what am I doing wrong? So there's no space on the front here. This is not designed to take an externally fitting drive. This cable implies that it is the shorter one, and the hard drive presumably should be here. I mean, we can put it in the bottom of this drive cage as we thought we could. I'm just curious as to why it's not lining up. should line up if it goes all the way forward. So it can't go all the way forward because there's a little detent in this bracket at the bottom, which makes it look like it's supposed to go in the front screw hole, but I don't see how I can get it in there. There's a little prong sticking up in the bottom plastic which is supposed to go in this little hole, so you can't flop it in like that because there isn't enough room. You can't slide it along because it's going to hit that first. It may be that it's designed for a specific drive, which I don't have, which is not a problem. We can put it in the drive bay, the other drive bay. What is going to make it more difficult to do is do the cabling. This drive cage is quite fiddly, but not too bad. So there's room in here. We can put this on the bottom, I think, if the holes line up. There we go. One lines up, and in fact, a hole lines up next to the hard disk drive label, so that is obviously not an accident. I'll put this screw in and then I'll show you the other two holes. So underneath here there's a hole here and a hole here. One thing I didn't do is check the settings for the drive in terms of whether it's cable selected or whether it's set as a master or slave. Almost always they're either set as master or cable selected anyway, so I'm not going to have to take it back out to redo that. It should be fine. Famous last words. The feel of it now is getting this cable underneath. Should we put it in while we're still at the top? I think we should. So data cable's gone in. We need to have power, but I need to make sure it's the right one. That's the one that was used for the optical drive, so it's going to be in roughly the right place. I'm going to use this one, which is the other opened one. Dell has this nice habit of capping off the unused Molex connectors. So we've got data and power now to the hard drive. Let's position it. Okay, that's really interesting because if we try and push that back, the power connector is going to foul the motherboard. So we're going to have to put the drive in the upper compartment. So the upper compartment is a bit more fiddly because it's much narrower. There we go. So we've got one screw on this side, and then there's holes in the cage, I'm hoping, for the other side. So yes, so through here we can put another screw in just down there. Don't know how easily you can see that on the camera. It basically goes through there. It's only two screws holding it, which doesn't feel great. I can put another screw in here. It's not technically a screw hole, but it'll make it line up with this little shelf a little better. So, because it's a spinning device, it is prone to vibration. I'm trying to minimize that as much as possible. It'll make the drive quieter and should extend its life a little bit. Looks like the little catch on that's broken, unfortunately, but just very, very slightly. Okay, let's try again. So we've got data. And we've got power. So when it was in this drive bay here, it was too low. It's just catching the edge of the motherboard. Hopefully this will be better. Now that the screw's in here, it's catching on something as it slides down. So this screw is going to have to come back out. Which means there's only 2 screws holding that hard drive, which is suboptimal. But that's the way it is. So it goes in much more smoothly now. And when I push it back, it doesn't catch on anything, so that's good. Right, let's do the same with the optical drive. As I said, we still don't know if this optical drive works, unfortunately, but there's a chance it will. We'll deal with the cable management when we put the final drive in. But we now have optical drive, hard drive in, floppy drive was never disconnected. That's also on a quick release. There's a little lever here, and here you just push those forward, push those up and slide that forward. Don't need to do that because I think it was working earlier. All right, so we've got a hard drive, we've got an optical drive, we've got a processor, we've got some RAM, we've got a network card and a sound card. So that's basically all we need for now on the back. I'll put some blanking plates in here in a bit. Time to power it on. See if we get any signal out of the video. Try this new monitor. So here's the monitor I was referring to. It's a Dell Ultrascan 800H, I think it is. At least from that series, it's Dell Trinitron 15-inch. I tried it yesterday. It hadn't been used for many years. It made some crackles, but there was no smoke or smell. Image is a bit dim. I'm not sure if that's the driving circuitry or whether it's that auto compensation that Trinitron tubes have. I'll have to just wait until we've got some more text on the screen to try it out. Just giving the screen a bit of a clean, the actual tube part, just so you can get the best picture on the camera. I've changed the shutter speed on the camera to be nice and low, so you shouldn't get any flicker. But it also means you might get some motion blur when I'm moving around. Let's get in there. So, second turning on, hopefully it won't blow up. That sounds like a normal wake up. It's gone into power saving mode. There's been no cracks and crackles today, so hopefully that was just bits of dust being burnt off. That's what I heard yesterday, hopefully. Because I've removed the front panel, it's this one here. So the monitor has come to life. I'm going to try and get into the BIOS. Can't remember if it's delete or F2 for this one. As you can see, there's no picture here at all yet. It's very, very dim. I put the brightness on maximum. Yesterday it took about 10 minutes to get up to a usable level. While we're waiting, let's find out if this tray opens and closes. It does. And not only does it open and close, it actually sounds better than the drive we took out. So that's good. So it's come out of power saving mode, it's receiving a signal. It's just very, very dim, even on the brightness setting. It's a really flat tube, it's a really nice looking display, but if we can't get an image on it, it's not much use to us.
2 hours later.
I can just about start to see an image. I don't know if you're getting that on the camera, but there is just, I can see the BIOS screen. It's just starting to get a band across the top. Can you get that? But I think this monitor is going to need servicing before we can use it in anger. Let's just see how bright it's going to go. I think you can just see it on the camera now. So I'll tell you what I can see. So it's defaulted to the 1st of January 1990 because we removed the CMOS battery. It's detected the 3.5-inch floppy correctly. It says there's no floppy B, which is correct. It's recognised the hard drive is 8.4 gigs. So that's all worked quite well. It's not recognised anything on the secondary drive channel though. So it may be that we need to go and set that up. Going to set both of these to auto. The other thing we do now know is it's got a 32 megs of RAM. It's going to be absolutely plenty for DOS and Windows 95, at least initially. It's confirming it's running at 233 megahertz. BIOS version A01. Anything else? It's got the secondary cache. It's got 2 megabytes of video memory, as we discussed. When I did a video, when I did a search on the Dell website for this service tag, it doesn't work, and there's no support for this M233a spec machine on the Dell UK website. There is on the archive.org Wayback Machine, which you saw earlier on in the video. It's starting to get a picture. You can just about see that now, but this is definitely not bright white, which is what it should be. I've got brightness and contrast turned up to maximum, and this button here changes between different image modes. So that's a standard mode, which is a little bit dimmer, and then you've got presentation mode, which is a bit more vibrant, and then you've got graphics / video for the best punch. So I've got it on that setting, and it's still not very bright, but at least it has come to life of sorts. Is it good enough for the video? I think it probably is. What's on page 2? Nothing very exciting. So this machine has got USB. It's got 2 USB ports around the back. There'll be USB 1.1 for mice and keyboards, but we're using a PS2 keyboard and mouse in this particular case. Right, should we see if we can boot off a DOS floppy? What I'm going to do, because I'm going to run some DOS games on here, I'm going to install DOS 6.22 first, then install Windows 95 on top of that. So if we go back to page 1, type in some sensible numbers. It's a little bit smeary as well, the display. It's too new to have a year 2000 bug. There we go, Monday 22nd April. So let's save that, see if we can boot off this floppy. Says we can. Let's see if DOS 622 can see all 8. So it's going to try and configure the unallocated space on my hard drive. Let's see what is on there already. It's found the drive, but there are no partitions, so that's fine. So we're just going to let's set up do its thing. I'm just going to reposition the camera. Hope you can see that a little better. So we can let it F-disk the hard drive into one big partition. It's running through the BIOS straightforward this time. So it's recognised the optical drive as well, so that's nice. System board device conflict. Okay, so what's happening here? So I'm guessing it's to do with the second page. Keyboard has reports, system password not enabled. Diskette first, correct. Power management. That shouldn't be anything to do with it. Power down. Put it on standby. So all of this is going to be taken over by the operating system anyway. Serial port, auto. Power report mode. Because this is all on auto, there shouldn't be any conflicts unless that sound card, because it's ISA, it should have jumpers on it to let you configure the IOQ and the IO address. However, it's a late ISA card and it has actually got plug and play. So it's possible that it is interfering with one of these. Okay, let's just reboot for now. It may be that Windows 98 can help us recognize what the problem is. Drive's working pretty well and it's pretty quick. So we're going to format a hard drive, 8.4 gigs at IDE standard speed with a 40 ribbon cable. It's going to take a little while. It's going faster than I thought actually, which makes me think it hasn't formatted, hasn't used the whole drive. It may have created a small partition. So the reason I'm installing DOS 622 first is I want to have a full DOS install with a fully populated DOS directory in case for when we do our DOS gaming on this machine, we're going to restart in DOS, and we want to be able to have access to those sort of tools in case we need them for optimization of the memory, for installing device drivers, etc. With 32 megs of RAM, we could run most DOS programs from within Windows 95. There's enough memory to do that. So if DOS 622 doesn't recognize the whole drive, I think we should change the plan and install directly from the Windows 95 floppy install disk, because I'm pretty sure that will recognize the whole, will give us one big large partition. So it's formatted that partition. I reckon it's going to be 2 gigs, which I think is the maximum available under DOS 622 because it still uses FAT16. We could have one big partition with Windows 95, but then the DOS games might be unhappy about a partition that's too big. We'll see. Let's get the localization correct. This image is brightened up quite a lot. It's still relatively dim. It's not coming through on the camera because the camera is doing the auto exposure thing, but you know, it is a bit on the dim side. It's a well-lit room and I can read it, but it would probably look slightly better in a dim room. I think there is some improvement that could be made. That's interesting. So I've just been playing around with the menu, which appears to have been corrupted in terms of language. If you go to the settings, there's a whole mixture of English. That looks like Chinese to me. I'm not entirely sure, and I'm not sure what this is. A different kind of glyph. So I think there is some memory corruption in the on-screen display, unfortunately. But also look, so we've got a really nice sharp picture now. If I go to the video mode, that's when you get the little bit of blurring. I think it's just trying to overdrive it a little bit too much. So presentation mode seems to be the best setting But yes, I think this monitor needs some assistance. What it definitely needs is a clean. So I've cleaned the screen, but the rest of the casing is pretty dusty. So whilst looking at the optical drive when changing it over, I've just noticed these two screws. So I think if we take these two screws out, this hard drive bracket comes out. So we can put a hard drive in this bay here. That would be my preferred position for it, I think. What I think you have to do is take the bracket out, put the bracket onto the hard drive and then put it back in. It's okay down here, but it's a little bit, it just feels like it's in the wrong place. Okay, so the install has finished. Let's reboot. We'll see if it's still unhappy with the config. See if that sound card is still causing problems, or whether the plug and play nature of it has fixed it. So it's still saying system board resource conflict, but it doesn't say what it is, unfortunately. Let's just boot anyway. That's assuming that it's got a 2 gig partition. Yeah, so it's created a single 2 gig partition, which is the biggest that FAT16 can deal with, which is the default for MS-DOS 622. So let's just run Microsoft Diagnostics for a second. So the computer is being identified correctly. It is a Pentium, has recognized everything. I think it's recognizing it as a classic because it has got both. Nothing in there looks out of place. Video. So it's S3 86C375 or 385 BIOS from 1997. It's got Visa support, which is nice. It's only version 1, not version 2, but that doesn't matter. Okay, so that's all good. No networks installed because this is DOS. And the OS version is 622 because we've just installed that. It's recognised the PS2 mouse. Oops. We haven't installed a mouse driver yet in there. Game adapter not detected. So there is a game adapter on the audio card, so that's partly the problem. So that's all looks good. LPT port 0. Okay, so it's not recognising the parallel printer port. So my guess is that the parallel printer port is conflicting with the sound card. It's recognising one serial port, which is correct. Windows isn't installed. So what's this going to tell us? LPT1 isn't being detected. Yeah, so it sounds like, not 100% sure, but it sounds like there's a conflict between the parallel printer port and the sound card. Now I do want the parallel printer port to be functional because we may want to use a zip drive on here. I quite often use zip drives to transfer things to legacy machines that don't have compact flash storage. So I don't really want to disable the LPT port, but if we have to, we have to. So we're going to go into setup. We're going to go to page 2. We're going to disable. We'll leave the serial port working. We could use LapLink, for example. So let's just boot it again. So there are no jumpers on that sound card because it's designed to be plug and play. So we can't change the sound card settings on the hardware. Okay, so yeah, so we don't have the conflict now. So at the moment, the sound card and the parallel port are overlapping in terms of resources. If I set the parallel port to a lower spec, if I set it to PS2 rather than ECP, it uses less resources, and then that may be the conflict. Should we try that? Hard drive sounds really good for being 27 years old. So at the moment it's the kind of ECP version of parallel ports. So both the parallel ports on the AT was a send only, so you could only send information using the parallel port, you couldn't receive data, and that was because at the time it was mostly just used for printing. With the introduction of the PS2, the parallel port became bidirectional, so you could use it to input data into the computer rather than just print it out. And an ECP is basically a faster version of that, but it requires more resources from the motherboard. So let's leave it on PS2. That'll give us the parallel bidirectional we need for using a zip drive. It won't be as fast, but it will hopefully free up an I/O queue or an I/O space so the sound card doesn't clash with it. Now, it should be possible to reprogram the sound card. There you go, yeah. So it was the extra IRQ being used by the ECP printer port that was conflicting with the sound card. Now the sound card we should be able to reprogram using a plug-and-play operating system. So we can potentially get rid of that problem in the future. But for now, I'm happy with that. So there we are, that's the end of part one. We've managed to take out the bits we didn't need, we put in a new sound card, we're using the existing VGA onboard graphics, and we've got it booting. We've verified the floppy disk is working, and we've installed DOS 622 and run Microsoft Diagnostics. So overall, that's the first part of the video. Next part of the video, we'll be installing Windows 95, see how that goes. So I hope you enjoyed this part of the video. Look forward to the next one when it comes out next week. And if you like the videos, don't forget to give them a thumbs up and subscribe if you like. Thank you very much.